Hello. Today we visit r/AskReddit to see what did you learn in school that has since been proven false? Make sure to comment something that has now been proved false. With that, sit back and enjoy. Ain't nobody offering me drugs. What the duck? And definitely not for free. 1 rock of crack please. Is 1 crack rock enough? Should we get some crack for the table? People definitely offer free drugs, it's just usually that they're your friends or at least people you've met on a night out, not random strangers who approach you for that sole purpose. I'm working security at a festival in Australia and yesterday a guy offered me MDMA because I looked bored. I was never offered drugs until I was in my latter half of my teenage years. And even then the conversations would go like this. Person, wanna try, drug. Me, no thanks. Person, K. And even then, these people weren't strangers. The Food Pyramid. Brought to you by Big Grain. Also brought to you by the 4 food lobbies. And then the Grain Nation attacked. I'm old enough to have been told eggs were part of dairy category. Why did we never question where eggs come from cows? Dairy does not mean cow-related. It means milk-related. The milk can just as well be from goat or ewe or buffalo. Agreed on the eggs, though. I genuinely tried to follow the pyramid when I was a kid. I lasted 2 days and the only thing I remember from the ordeal was, who can eat this much bread? It made me go, oh, cereal is good for me. Which if we're honest was their whole point. I remember learning in 2nd grade that pizza was the perfect food because it had all 4 food groups. Were you trying to pass tomatoes as both fruit and vegetable at once? If so, I approve. That I can't use my notes in life. The duck, does that even mean? I'm always looking at my notes when I do my job. In real life, they don't care if you memorize it, they just want you to get it right. If they know you're doing something complex from memory, they might actually be more skeptical about you getting it right. Yep, I manufacture things for a living, and I'm good at maths. But I still double-check my calculations on a calculator before I cut or build. Shit, in every job I have had there are step-by-step notes. I've been at my job a year and the thing people are excited about is that I made like 15 manuals that didn't exist for processes before. Irony. My lab job is literally required to have books with exact instructions on how to do the job. If I'm working on something I do rarely, I drag that book right over to my workstation and follow it like a recipe. I'm not guessing or misremembering shit when I have a big old book of notes. We learned the planet name mnemonic. My very easy method just speeds up naming planets. My very easy method just seems useless now. We learned it as, my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. It must be effective because I still remember it. 9 pizzas turned into nachos now. That I'd never be conveniently walking around with a calculator in my pocket. Though to be honest, at the time, the concept would have been a little weird. It's a tougher sell to convince kids who don't want to do their homework that the hard work you put into learning math, or anything really is going to create a foundation to build upon with further knowledge, enriching their lives and preparing their intellect to cope with new situations and problems. But yes, calculator. Though to be really fair, once you hit a certain level of math education, it isn't really feasible to do without a calculator, and inevitably your ability to do math in your head atrophies. Yes, trying to learn advanced math, even as low as algebra or science when you have to reach for a calculator every time you need to add 7 and 9 would be a complete disaster. There is a point in mathematics when it becomes juggling symbols around and arithmetic becomes completely irrelevant. There's a long way to go before you get there, and only really applies to pure math. Statistics and science both involve small numbers a lot of the time. Detentions or suspensions will go on your permanent record. It's not a lie. It's just that that record is now on paper in a warehouse, and no one cares about it. By now it's probably shredded. Schools don't keep records of graduated students for that long. Depends on the state. They have to keep a copy of every student that graduated transcripts. They have to keep the entire file of other stuff for as long as 10 years in some states. I live in Canada. I really wanted a copy of my permanent record. But when I asked for it less than a year after I graduated, they told me they basically shred those the day people graduate. Teacher here. I can see every detention, suspension, even minor calls home back to middle school on our online portal. We just don't care, though it does sometimes answer the "is this kid always a shithead or is it just me?" question. My school we can see back to elementary. Kids change over time, so I give some grace, but it really does answer behavior issues. Like, am I a bad teacher? Am I bad at reaching this kid? Oh no, every grade before had the same problems with them. Relax a bit. That's only within district though, right? My kids have moved states 3 times now. Our current school can't even get the previous state's school to forward last year's paperwork. That cracking your fingers gives arthritis. Older people die on this hill more often than a heart attack. When I was a teenager I was a cashier. I'm ringing up one old woman and crack my knuckles without thinking. She, I kid you not, actually slapped my hand and told me I'd get arthritis doing that. That cracking your fingers gives arthritis. Let me tell you the legend of the man known as Donald L. Unger. This mother ducker held a grudge for 60 years and cracked only the knuckles on one hand, just to disprove to his parents that no, it does not cause arthritis. I'm not sure if he's still alive, he would be 96 years old. He won an Ig Nobel Prize for it in 2009. I've gotten a lot of awards and degrees, and all of a sudden I get my 15 minutes of fame out of this stupidity, he said. But I'm happy to get any award, I've got a blank space on my wall. What a champ. That we would all be fully converting to the metric system by the 80s. Highway I-19 from Tucson to Nogales, Mexico has speed limit and distance signs in metric. It is the only US road in metric. Do you happen to know why? Way back when Carter was president there was a push to switch to the metric system in the US. That stretch of road was the first stretch of road to be converted before the US gave up trying to switch. Before Ronald Reagan cut the funding and abolished the metric board in 1982. You know, I'm American but I spent grade school in another country and I still have to think pretty hard about it when I use the metric system. My brain says it's easier, but I think I'm just pre-programmed to use inches, feet and miles. I grew up in America then moved to Japan for 6 years. I managed to convert entirely to metric and now I can't go back even though I'm living in America again. It doesn't help that I'm a scientist and use exclusively metric at work. My congressman represents me. That my congressman gives a singular duck about me. I frequently email my state representative to let him know he's still a shithead. That you taste different things, bitter, sweet, sour, etc. on different parts of your tongue. I remember in elementary school doing the experiment where you drop liquids on different parts of your tongue to taste the difference. Turns out that's bullshit. You taste everything everywhere on your tongue and the experiment worked by confirmation bias. Currently in med school, we got taught this in anatomy. Yes, and a common misconception is that the specific primary taste sensations are only felt at special spots on the tongue. In reality they are felt everywhere but the taste is sharper at certain spots which are mapped out and taught to us. It's more related to taste bud density and sensitivity to a taste. In a social psychology course in college, I was taught that, among other things, you could prime people to walk more slowly by saying elderly-themed words to them. In the very next semester, I took a research capstone course where our textbook was a book called The 7 Deadly Sins of Psychology, and in that book they debunked that exact study about priming. Not sure when the book was published in comparison to when I took the social psych class, but it's likely that the social psych professor, who I hated for other reasons, was teaching us already disproven studies as if they were fact. I'm still flabbergasted by it to this day. I learned in psychology, at uni in 2004 that if we taught babies sign language, we would inhibit spoken language. 10 years later, my son's occupational therapist and language therapist taught me it's actually the opposite. Man, raising humans is always changing and never right. Chemistry's a bit like this. Chemistry up until 16, Bohr's model of the atom. Chemistry over 16, everything we taught you was wrong. In that case, it's understandable because older Bohrian models do accurately capture some basic ideas of chemistry, helping you learn those basic ideas before you get to more detailed models that better represent extreme cases, but might be too difficult to start off with. As I've heard it said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. I'd prefer that all models are imperfect, but some are good enough. It's like going from classical Newtonian physics to modern physics. Newtonian is still good enough for a lot of cases, but working with some more esoteric details requires the more advanced models. That college professors were hardcore. My freshman year my physics professor made us throw tennis balls around for an entire lecture. Yeah lol. They basically remind you that you are paying to be there, so they don't care if you skip because it's your own problem, although they still want you to do well. Right? Most professors are there for research. Teaching is like the side gig. Except for the egotistical ones. That I needed to play the recorder. Hot cross buns. BAGBAGGGGGAAAABAG. After all these years I can still hear my music teacher's voice in my head repeating those notes. That when Columbus discovered North America everyone thought the world was flat. Or that Columbus discovered North America at all. I don't think he ever set foot on the continent, and certainly not any part of the modern continental US. That learning cursive was important. Ever since I started, I had horrible handwriting. I had cursive pounded into me, public school, late 1960s. My dad, himself a teacher, had bad handwriting and never used cursive, only printing except for his signature. Senior year of high school, I had enough credits that I was eligible for senior release, so I could have started classes an hour later. But Dad wouldn't let me. He forced me to take an elective course. My older sister was a typist, so I took a typing class. Mindless bullshit class senior year, right? It was 1979 to 80. Just a couple years before the computer explosion. Just knowing the QWERTY layout put me way ahead of the other students. I was one of the first, if not the first person in my program, to write my master's thesis on a word processor, instead of using a per-page expensive typing service. Out of everything I learned in high school, and I learned a lot, probably the most valuable thing I learned in the long run was how to type. You can be anything if you just work hard enough. Nah, later on I found out if you work hard enough. It's just letting your boss know that you would do anything at the base pay you are getting, and they can put more work on you without complaints even if you want to move up, because the reality is they don't want you to move up because you are making their work easy without them doing it. Funny enough, just had a conversation with my wife and my son about George Washington's wooden teeth. They were not wooden. He actually had lost all his teeth by 30 and is known to have had at least 4 sets of dentures. Actually, you could make a horror movie based on George Washington's teeth given where they came from. Having another person's teeth, wet, in your mouth, is already a horror movie. Using enslaved people's teeth is. What's the horror movie equivalent of death metal? That Napoleon was short. That Thomas Edison was anything other than a good businessman. That French lady whose name currently eludes me didn't say the thing about cake. Marie Antoinette is the name eluding you. I'm very smart. I actually admired Thomas Edison a lot when I was in school. I was taught he was successful due to perseverance, that he just kept trying until he finally got it. I admired what I thought he was as someone who never gave up until he finally succeeded at an invention. Then I learned what Thomas Edison was really doing in well, let's say I have been lied to about who he really was. I will give Edison this. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That is a really important life lesson that too many people never learn. Thank you for watching all the way until the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment something that has now been proved false. Click the video above if you want to continue to watch my content. Until next time.